Want to continue to build public housing faster than we have. We're scraping the rust off an organization that hasn't built public housing in the last 30 years.
Yeah, it was actually really great to be there on the ground because often I'm talking to the Department of Health about where are we at with these 10 clinics. You know, we made the commitment. We've had 5 new family health teams formed so far this year. There's 5 more that we need to get done before the end of this year at a minimum.
It's hard when you don't see it happening. You know, a lot of people don't understand the work behind the scenes, and that's a lot of work.
Welcome to This Week Uncut, where we take a look at the top stories of the week from CHCO-TV and The Courier. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. We begin this week with a look at the forest fire risk that New Brunswick finds itself in, which is extremely high. So what we understand about that is that the conditions outdoors in wooded areas, even in your backyard, is that it's very, very dry.
And we've seen this also in neighboring Nova Scotia, where Premier Tim Houston has even asked people not to go into the woods at this time because of how dry it is. And obviously with forest fires they've had in the past, we have seen the devastating effects of these types of moments in time. I know this is something you have been following extensively, though, especially since the forest fire in Quebec and Shamcook. What else are you learning about how we can be the most proactive in making sure something of that nature doesn't happen again right now?
Yeah, so and just to be clear, the Nova Scotia government has banned all wooded activities. And in fact, if you're caught in the woods doing anything, hiking, fishing, camping that's not at a specific campground, you will receive a fine of $25,000. But Nova Scotia is also considered in a drought condition at the moment. New Brunswick is not quite there yet, and that's for 2 reasons. We have low wind so far, and we have high humidity. So what that means for folks at home is that high humidity means there's more moisture in the air, which means that it's harder for a forest fire to ignite. It doesn't mean it can't, and we are currently experiencing one just outside the city of Miramichi, about 11 kilometers outside the city of Miramichi, that started at 35 hectares and has now been knocked down to 22.5, so they're working very extensively on that. But yeah, there are plenty of things that people can do in this time. The simple one is don't start fires. I know that seems pretty obvious, but it just means you can't have a camp fire in your backyard. You cannot, do s'mores on the weekend. It's just now is not the time. And what the issue is when firefighters are being called to forest fires, or brush fires as they call them, is that the fire is burning down through this layer they call the duff, which is the decomposed organic matter that exists on that layer. And so what it does is it burns underneath, and it can go unnoticed or undetected for a long period of time before it will come back up to the surface to reach for oxygen.
I know we saw that again, the Quebec Shamcook fires, and I'm sure a lot of people in the community also experienced that well up close. It's something quite startling when you realize how long that can last for, even after what you think the forest fire is over. Just to see that in real life, it's left an impression on me, and I know that now I take these kind of things even more seriously than I did before.
Well, wildfires can spread very quickly. That's the part about them that are extremely uncertain. Wind patterns change during a fire, and it means it could be heading in one direction and 10 minutes later heading in another direction. Embers are a big thing. So once a forest fire starts, and you would have seen this if you watched any coverage from California or across Canada at the moment on both sides of our country, but embers they disperse. And so what they do is they get carried in the wind. And so they will attach themselves to other ignition sources a kilometer away, 10 kilometers away, and then a new fire ignites. And so it's a matter of just chasing time. And when I did the original investigation into why an alert ready wasn't issued during the Quebec wildfire, we discovered that the lead time on a forest fire is about 7 minutes. So you have 7 minutes from the time of an evacuation, a mandatory evacuation of some kind, to leave your home and get out of there. And that's also complicated in and of itself.
I think anyone who, when we did have that Quebec Shamcook fire, was up on Cares Ridge and watched it as it really did jump from place to place, saw exactly what that means in their own neighborhood, how scary that can be, because the fire could be in one place here, seems like it's not happening, and then it's way over here as well. And we look back on that fire as well, started by an ATV incident, and I know that in Nova Scotia, even that obviously is banned right now, going in ATVs in the woods, but it shows you that sometimes even something that's not a fire can be what ignites an entire forest fire when you have these dry conditions.
Well, yeah, in New Brunswick right now, there's no ban on activities in wooded areas, so you still can go hiking, you still can go camping, but you have to be aware of your surroundings. So if you are on an ATV and you are in the woods, don't leave it in an area where the grass is very high, because the bottoms of ATVs get extremely hot when they're being driven for long periods of time. So if you're taking time to rest during a journey with a group of ATVs or by yourself, please park on gravel, not on the grass or near an ignition source. Be careful with your cigarette butts. Don't throw them on the ground. If you're smoking, make sure they're completely out. Put them in an ashtray or a can of water. Do not throw them on the ground. The likelihood of a cigarette causing a forest fire is lower than an ATV in the woods, as we've experienced. It's the risk is not impossible. So be careful with what you're doing. Be aware of your surroundings. I would encourage people to go out and actually just put their feet in the grass right now, because it just crumples underneath your feet. It's so dry. And currently there have been 214 fires since the beginning of forest fire season. 215 this same time last year. So we're on pace to match last year, and it will be interesting to see how the rest of the forest fire season progresses.
I know many of us are doing rain dances right now, although we don't see a lot of rain in the forecast. So hopefully that will be in the weeks ahead. But again, just to take those precautions right now. Better safe than sorry.
And then the other thing is it has to be consistent rain. It can't just be one day of rain where it reverberates off the ground and doesn't absorb. It has to be, St. Andrews Fire Chief Kevin Theriault said it has to be like 3 days of solid rain. So we're currently on the way to drought conditions, or we're very close to drought conditions. Forest fire officials are on high alert. Water bombers are on high alert. Everybody is on edge, and we're advising people to take as many precautions as possible.
Yes, and I know obviously from even the air quality that we've seen recently from fires happening all across Canada and the U.S., we can see what that leads to. Even when it's in a province far away, we still can experience part of that right back home. So again, definitely for all Canadians to be on high alert right now.
For sure. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about a housing announcement in St. Stephen and Premier Susan Holt's visit to Southwest New Brunswick.
A big part of what we are making sure we do are finding new solutions to fix those problems, especially in rural communities. More rural communities that haven't seen the housing need for a long time.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth. We are heading over to St. Stephen right now, where with a couple of great new announcements. Let's talk a little bit first about a new housing announcement.
Yeah, so essentially I had been listening to the council meeting that happened on July 30th, and they were talking about all of the efforts that they're trying to undertake to get more multi-residential units, apartment buildings essentially, and the team was talking about potentially 163 units in total, and so I was curious about that conversation. So naturally, I made a request to the Department of Social Development, which oversees the New Brunswick Housing Corporation, and not soon, 10 minutes later, I got in my inbox a media advisory for a housing announcement in St. Stephen. So we all got in the car and we went to go see what that was about. So essentially what the New Brunswick government is doing right now through the New Brunswick Housing Corporation is they're fast-tracking modular homes, multi-unit modular manufacturing to kind of expedite the process so they can get more housing quicker.
And this means basically that these modular homes can be built year-round. They can be built in cities. They don't have to be done in the towns they're in. And sometimes that can be the biggest roadblock to development in rural areas, is that how do you get a developer to want to come further away than they are located, maybe an hour's drive, 2 hours drive. So this is another solution that could work to also help in these rural locations where housing can have that added challenge of getting developers to the site.
Well, exactly. And you know, while these housing units are not being built in St. Stephen, local contractors are, used as part of the process to put the modular home on the foundation, to do all of the extra work of the site. All that site work is done by local contractors. So while it's not being built in St. Stephen, it is brought in by a local contractor. So they are part of that process.
And obviously the housing crisis it's not even just happening nationally. This is a global issue. But in St. Stephen, as far as Charlotte County goes, it really is the place that is the hardest hit right now in our community. So what was it like talking to the mayor, to the deputy mayor about their experience of having some good news to share when it comes to housing?
For sure. I mean, this is 5 people in St. Stephen who will come off of the wait list for public housing. 5 might not seem like a lot to the community, but it is. It's 5 people who will now have a roof over their head that's affordable. The other thing is that, in places like St. Stephen, Charlotte County, unhoused people are not something that they've been dealing with for a very long time. The housing crisis, while has been developing over several decades, is now culminating in areas that are not used to this type of thing. And so it is felt very acutely. People are not used to it, and so they're feeling it more personally, and they're feeling it like it's more extreme because they can see it so close to their home and they're not used to seeing it. But this is a good step forward. And what this does is it provides a physical opportunity to the community to say, look at what your local government is doing, look at what the provincial government is doing. You might not see boots on the ground, but the work is being done, and it will get done.
And I think that, yes, St. Stephen is a really good example of seeing the housing crisis also coupled with the homelessness crisis in the same small community, whereas if you go back 10 years, maybe we wouldn't see it the way we are right now so visibly. But a lot of people we've talked to who are even experiencing homelessness in St. Stephen have very recent memories of having an apartment. So a lot of times these housing crises, when it comes to affordable housing, is increasing our homelessness crisis as well.
Right, and we can all sympathize and understand that there's a lot of people in the country right now who are living on the edge, one paycheck away from something bad happening. So this is a question of affordability for sure, but we also know that the community is on the radar of the New Brunswick Housing Corporation for also what's considered supportive housing. So housing for folks who have been homeless, who are homeless for a length of time, that require a little extra support when they do return to traditional style housing. So that is all work that is being done, that are through meetings, through phone calls, through Zooms, that are all being done by the municipality. And I want to say, I would encourage people to understand that municipalities are not responsible for housing. And so when they face the criticisms from the community, because they're the closest government to the people, keep that in the back of your mind. But they also have an obligation to be advocating as fiercely as they can for their community, both the housed and unhoused.
And I know, and I think you said that really well when you think of 5 units that we have added to St. Stephen. While that might seem like a small number, St. Stephen again is a small town in comparison. When you think of it across the scale of New Brunswick, we saw Habitat for Humanity team up with the province and Eastern Charlotte the week prior to see a new unit go into their community as well. So all these add up and paint a picture of a New Brunswick that has more to offer. But again, the wait list is still there's still a lot of people looking for these affordable options. So it will be a matter of time and quite a lengthy time, I think, till we see some really serious improvement.
Let's take a listen to what the Minister responsible for Housing, David Vicki, had to say about the work under the New Brunswick Housing Corporation.
These are folks coming directly off the NB housing waitlist, meet the criteria for these homes, meet the family size for these homes, will be coming in.
Okay. In a recent council meeting, Jeff Renaud said that you guys are working with them for 2026 for potentially funding for more affordable housing or more public housing. Could you elaborate on what you might be able to provide for them for 2026?
Look, we're certainly open to projects. We want to continue to build public housing faster than we have. We're scraping the rust off an organization that hasn't built public housing in the last 30 years. And we're also partnering with nonprofits, folks like Neighborhood Works, but also nonprofit leaders like Matt Rouleau in Southern New Brunswick are really the key partnerships, the key nonprofit partnerships that we want to continue to make in communities like St. Stephen, but also throughout Southern New Brunswick, Southwestern New Brunswick, to make sure that those partnerships are strong and we can continue to make sure that they're getting the funding they deserve and the support they need to meet the growing demand in communities like this.
So how many of the units that have been announced were already in construction prior to the Holt government?
So as of now, we've got about 127 units under construction. I don't have specific numbers on what was announced prior. We've topped up the commitment of the previous government, totaling now over 500 units of public housing committed within our mandate.
St. Stephen has struggled to find developers to build here. Rural building, I think, is a little bit different than urban building. But there's examples in St. Andrews of Compass Housing where municipalities have helped fund developers that promise affordable housing. Are you working with developers on that kind of agreement? Like, is that part of the NB housing model?
Look, a big part of what we are making sure we do are finding new solutions to fix those problems, especially in rural communities. More rural communities that haven't seen the housing need for a long time now have it. And we've seen those impacts very acutely here in St. Stephen, and that's why we need to make partnerships like this. So this is an example of modular construction. These units were not built in St. Stephen, they were brought here, and local contractors were used to support the installation of them on this site. But this is modular construction, built in a factory, and now will house folks in a community that really needs it.
What's the timeline on that then? Is it quicker, I suppose? It must be quicker.
Yeah, it's much quicker. There's certainly some more unique challenges. A lot of our systems are built for traditional stick building, and a lot of our financing structures are built like that. Government's uniquely positioned in being able to invest in those, so we want to make sure that we are at the front line of investing in modular construction so that more projects like this can happen faster.
It's nice that we get a GNB logo on the podium here today, but projects like this happen because of teamwork. And so I'm really glad to have the chance to thank the leadership team at the municipality of St. Stephen. So Mayor McEachran, Deputy Mayor Wheaton, and I know the rest of council has been supportive of this, and you've worked hard to make it happen. The community of St. Stephen itself, they probably can't hear me, but these neighbors and the people around also have to say yes and support projects like this, and it's with the council's leadership and others that means that 5 more families can have a beautiful place to call home in this community. Thanks to the incredible work of Supreme Homes, we're very lucky to have your leadership in our housing sector in this province. And then we get to add in the local representation from MLA Baucus and the hard work that folks at the minister leads in the Department of Local Government to make sure that policies are supportive, and then David and his team at the Housing Corporation that have been driving this, and then we get all of the legislature voting in support. So these are real team efforts, and so I'm glad to be able to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you for all of your work. Like you say, it's the start. We're going to accelerate projects like this and more so that every New Brunswicker has an affordable, safe, accessible place to call home in this beautiful community and in this beautiful province.
That was the minister responsible for the New Brunswick Housing Corporation, David Vicki, talking about the work the government is undertaking to provide more public housing. But he wasn't the only official there. The Premier was also there. She's visiting Southwest New Brunswick. St. Stephen Mayor Alan McEachran was there, as well as the Deputy Mayor. So there was a good representation from both levels of government at this announcement, and it was interesting to see them. They were getting a tour of the facility, and this council has faced a lot of criticism about how it is handling and continues to handle the homelessness crisis, but also the housing crisis in that community.
Okay, what was your takeaway from being there with all levels of government?
Well, I think that they need to work together. There's no situation in which, the municipal government can do something that doesn't involve the provincial government. The provincial government is responsible for housing. And so while they have initiatives for developers, like we saw in St. Andrews, where the municipality forked over a certain amount of money to help make that development affordable for its community members, there's only so much it can do. And so they need to work together. And that's what you saw there, was them coming together and having a discussion about the work that's being done to provide more public and affordable housing.
Okay, well, I look forward to following it as further developments are announced, and I imagine there'll be more rolling out going into the winter of 2026.
Let's take a listen to Mayor Alan McEachern and his thoughts on the new public housing in St. Stephen.
Well, it means a lot. It's a step in the right direction to get, it's great that the province recognizes the need and supported the need. And housing is very important. I mean, what better way to sustain and build communities with housing? I mean, and that's the number one thing we need to do, is provide housing for people, and we're getting there. So I appreciate the efforts for housing. It's really great, and we got to support all levels of people in our communities as well. So I'm glad that we're doing that here today, and I'm anxious to get inside and take a look at it as well.
Yeah, the council has been working alongside the CAO staff members to kind of get more units up and running. I think 163 was the last council meeting that we were discussing. How do we make this happen more quickly? Like, what do you see as the path forward?
Well, we just got to keep pushing. I mean, obviously we got to keep pushing. And we need all levels of government to support us on these ventures. A lot of different houses are different situations. We need to support our residents that need assistance, and NB housing is one of those things. And yes, it's going to come to the point we're going to be doing housing announcements quite regularly. I'm looking forward to a few that are in the fire right now, and I mean, fire, that's not a good one. You're talking about building, but they're in that, they're on course to success, and there's a lot of interest. The biggest challenge is find builders. So our governments have got to start looking at, continue looking at promoting trades as well. That's very important, and supporting those trade workers and getting them through the courses and get them on their hands on the tools. And that's what I do. I mean, it's done me well, and I'm glad I get into the trades, and I think we need to support the trades as well. That's who builds these things, right? So,
do you think seeing this development in particular, but construction, boots on the ground, will help some of the criticism that the council is facing about the unhoused folks that are living in St. Stephen, or people who are kind of on the edge, I guess?
Yes, I mean, yeah, it's hard when you don't see it happening. A lot of people don't understand the work behind the scenes, and that's a lot of work. Building is one thing, but to get it through all the bureaucracy and red tape, it's challenging, and we're all competing as well, because it's a New Brunswick, Canada problem, right? It's big. It's a big problem. So we're all reaching in that same basket for the same construction workers and the same funds, and it's been very challenging. So it's good to see them that they honor that role here from the province.
That was St. Stephen Mayor Alan McEachern. We're going to be right back with This Week Uncut, and when we do, we're going to be speaking with Premier Susan Holt and about the International Homecoming Parade in St. Stephen.
Yeah, one of the things that we found, which is really encouraging, is that doctors have been raising their hands saying, I want to participate in this model. I want to build a clinic and a team that way.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
Premier Susan Holt has been in Southwest New Brunswick on her Charlotte County tour this week. A nice part of her summer is getting out across the province and getting to the communities that she represents as the Premier and seeing what's going on. She was in St. Stephen this week, visiting both, as we mentioned, the housing initiative that was unveiled and also the new collaborative care clinic at the Charlotte County Hospital. She was also here in St. Andrews. We were lucky enough to have her come sit down on the couch for half an hour. That's already airing on television, so anyone who watches a new episode of Southwest Magazine can take a look at Premier Holt's half an hour sit down with us, where we really talked about everything from how she's handling the trade war to her plans to open all these collaborative clinics across New Brunswick, and then also topics like housing. What was your takeaway? I know you were in the room and listening to the interview that we recorded.
Well, first of all, I don't envy her schedule. I'm a busy person, but when I found out her schedule on Wednesday, I thought, my goodness, there's not a minute that is not accounted for. So good for her for trying to take in every possible opportunity. That conversation speaks to kind of where the province is at the moment. She talked a little bit about her efforts on spending, and I remember during the election campaign the promise to balance the budget. But what she's come to realize, and what she's said in your interview, is that fixing healthcare and fixing education and fixing housing is costing money. And also at the same time, a trade war is happening. And so there's a lot of push and pull in this process. And so she doesn't really know whether the budget will be balanced.
I know. I was worried about to bringing up the question, the budget and balancing the budget, because I'm sure it's something that she's been asked a lot in recent weeks and recent months, because this was a big promise of her government. But nevertheless, the last time we sat down for half an hour was around Christmas time, and that was pre-Trump inauguration, pre-trade war. A lot of things have changed. We thought back in COVID times, that was the weirdest thing that any province could deal with. And now she's been dealt a totally different hand of cards, and definitely is a challenge. So I think she's just trying to be honest with New Brunswickers to say this is a lot more than we expected, but the promises themselves in terms of deliverables, healthcare, the lunch program at school, things like that, things she wants to make sure are a reality, have to take priority over the balancing the budget.
For sure. And I think she was honest when she was here today in saying that while she is spending more money, she has to do it in a way that fits within the capabilities of New Brunswick and its taxpayers. And so therein lies the challenge, doesn't it? Because you want to give more, you want to fix the things that New Brunswickers need fixed. Need is the emphasis there. But at the same time, there's only so much money. And so when we're thinking about cuts that are being made to libraries and to tourism attractions, this is a give and take that the Premier is balancing, and obviously everyone wants everything always, but that's not always possible. And this is where journalism comes into play, right? When promises are made and things are said, it is our job to hold those things to account, or to go back to them and say what's happened in the time since you made this promise. We're doing that a little bit with the collaborative care clinics, right? We're 9 months in to an 18-month promise. So we're over half the time into that promise. And so we're looking and we're watching for the things that have been promised.
And I thought it was really interesting, though, that they've set out to do the 10 they want to do the first year of these collaborative care clinics. St. Stephen is one, Blacks Harbour. So Charlotte County does get represented in those 10 that the province is taking on. But and then Dr. Dornan was also in St. Andrews today as well, who came to the Wellness Centre to see what Dr. Julie Levesque-Taylor has been doing in her own proactive strategy to be like these collaborative care clinics that we're seeing the province take on across the province. And Dr. Julie was here, if you look at an old episode, not that old really, within recent months. I think it came out in May, where she talks about what she's doing in the clinic and how it aligns with the province and what they want to do, and how this clinic now might be added to the 30 they hope to get off the ground in the next few years.
Well, exactly. Doctors are doing the work already, and she said today during that interview that helps them, right? If something fits the model, they're going to support it, because then it means that much of the legwork is already done. But you also hear from, the New Brunswick Medical Education Foundation that doctors are being trained to work in collaborative ways. It's no longer solo practices where doctors are existing by themselves, doing all the work, doing all the paperwork, doing all the managing of the clinic. Now it's a collaborative model where everyone works together toward better patient outcomes. So this is a trend toward the future. It brings New Brunswick ahead of what the curve is in terms of the learning, but also, the goal of being matched, or having everyone attached. Almost everyone, I don't want to say everyone, almost everyone attached by 2029.
Well, she talked a lot about the collaborative care clinics, a lot about housing, but she also talked about some of the fun things she was able to get up to while in Charlotte County, part of which was making chocolate at Chocolate Fest. And I know she's checking out International Fest, heading to Campobello as well, but take a listen for yourself. Here is our interview with Premier Susan Holt.
It was certainly a big shift because the economic threat and just the impact of the threat alone on our economy has been really negative. It's impacted GDP growth forecasts, that impacts the revenue the province gets to deliver on our commitments on healthcare and housing and education, and it generally has taken up a lot of our time and attention. I've spent a lot of time with the premiers and prime ministers and now governors and senators when I had imagined I would be spending more time in New Brunswick. But it's necessary. We have to defend our province, our economy, our workers, our entrepreneurs. We need a growing and healthy economy to support a healthy population and society. So it's been a shift from what we imagined this time last year, but it's a serious threat that needs attention.
Nevertheless, you're using a lot of your summer to visit different communities across the province. We have you in the Southwest this week. Tell us a little bit about where your tour of Charlotte County in particular has taken you both today and the following days.
Yeah, this is a mix of some of those things I just talked about, wanting to do this tour to connect with some of our employers and those economic drivers in the region, as well as wanting to connect with healthcare professionals and get to the clinics in the communities where we know we need to increase access to care. So I was in St. Stephen yesterday doing a housing announcement, visiting the clinic there and the hospital that we're feeling really optimistic we're going to be able to move out of the hospital and grow into a great family health team space, doing the Chocolate Festival and the International Festival, meeting with the folks at Skredding, at Tuddenham Farms. Today, I'm briefly in St. Andrews. I'm going to go and meet with the team at the Wellness Center here to talk about how they're innovating and delivering healthcare to this community, and then heading to Connors Brothers and Moe and East Coast Innovations onto St. George and Blacks Harbour before crossing over to Campobello. So in Campobello, same thing, meeting with the health clinic team on Campobello, meeting with the mayor. I'm going to get to visit the Roosevelt International Park for the first time for me, and then on from there to St. Martin's. So covering a lot of ground, and looking forward to seeing all of those communities again for the most part, or in some cases for some first stops.
St. Stephen has one of the 10 collaborative care clinics promised this year by your government. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to see it in action yesterday and what you think that will do for healthcare, particularly in Charlotte County.
Yeah, it was actually really great to be there on the ground because often I'm talking to the Department of Health about where are we at with these 10 clinics. We made the commitment. We've had 5 new family health teams formed so far this year. There's 5 more that we need to get done before the end of this year at a minimum. And they'll give me updates, but seeing it on the ground, particularly the progress that the team has made in St. Stephen, they've really taken to heart our requests that we've got to push the flexibility on these teams, on who's involved, on creative ways to engage healthcare professionals to deliver access. They've started a weekly access clinic where they have some retired doctors that can provide coverage 1 day a week to allow patients who aren't attached to come in and get those appointments. They have new nurse practitioners in the clinic, but they're still on the top floor of the hospital. And they're using kind of a wing of the hospital. It's not ideal space for primary and preventative care. The hospital could use that space for more of the acute care needs. But now we have all of the people ready to go. We're identifying space in the community where they could move to, hoping to get that negotiated in the months to come so that we can have that clinic open before the end of this calendar year.
Nice. And so in St. Andrews, you're visiting the clinic with Dr. Julie Levesque-Taylor today. She was up here a couple of months ago talking about her progress. I know it wasn't one that was slated for this year, but it looks like some of the things she's doing could align with how you are trying to bring collaborative care across New Brunswick.
Yeah. One of the things that we found, which is really encouraging, is that doctors have been raising their hands saying, I want to participate in this model. I want to build a clinic and a team that way. And we are not here to stop them. Even though we have a commitment to 10 in specific locations, if we end up with 15 because doctors have raised their hand and made it happen, we are ready to work with anyone who wants to build the kind of collaborative practice in community that means that patients can feel confident that their records and their health are being looked after by a team of folks. And regardless of whether someone retires or moves away or otherwise, they will still be connected to a source of care. So Julie, Dr. Julie has been great about innovating and bringing that kind of collaborative practice together. She's been working with the team at Department of Health, and so we're excited to see what she's been building and to support the direction she's going into.
And how will you measure the success of these models long-term in New Brunswick?
The measures are critical. So you might remember at the State of the Province, we put forward 2 major measures on healthcare. One is the amount of New Brunswickers waiting to be attached to that permanent healthcare home, that family health team. Right now, it's 79% of New Brunswickers are attached. That number, we'll get a new one here in a handful of months, and I don't imagine it's moved much because we do have population that has grown. We have people that have left the healthcare system while we've been adding clinic capacity, right? We've taken 5,000 people off the list, but I suspect there's some new ones who have been added as well. So measuring how many people don't have access to care and getting that number to 0. I don't think we can get to 0 in 4 years, but we're going to get as close as we can. But then you have to make sure that just because people are attached to a clinic, can they get timely care? It's one thing to say, I have a family doctor, but if you can't get an appointment, if the phone doesn't get answered, when your kid is sick and they have 104-degree fever and you're trying to get in, you can't wait 6 or 7 days or 3 weeks. So we're measuring the amount of people that have access to an appointment in 5 days or less. And that's a measure that the healthcare system does to make sure that patients may be attached, but they also need timely access to care. And right now that sits at about 33% of New Brunswickers who have a doctor can get access in 5 days. We need to get that way up.
You have ambitious goals as well when it comes to affordable housing. I know you were with Minister Vicki yesterday in St. Stephen for the launch of 5 new units in that community. Talk a little bit about what the long-term goals are for bringing more affordable housing to the province.
Well, the simple goal is we need more affordable housing, and we need a whole bunch of different kinds of affordable housing. So the announcement yesterday of those 5 new families, or the spaces for 5 more families to get access to affordable public housing, represents one piece of it, in partnership with a New Brunswick builder, one of our leading modular builders. That's public housing. We need more stock that is deeply affordable. We need more stock that is generally affordable. So supporting builders and making sure that they can offer the kind of rents capped, since we put a rent cap in place, that people can afford. We've taken the 15% off the cost of building multi-units to try to get more development happening. And we have a direct-to-tenant subsidy that covers the gap between maybe the market rent and what that family can afford. We increased that by $21 million. So there's, I think, 1,200 families taking advantage of that program. So we need more building, period, more affordable building through programs like the direct-to-tenant subsidy, more public housing. So we're building 500 and some more units this year in that space. And then we need to do more, right? We need to be looking at all the different options in our housing stock and how we can build supported housing, accessible housing, and we're doing that in partnership with community groups, not-for-profits, municipalities, everybody that wants to be a part of it.
What's working when it comes to rural communities? Are these modular homes one idea that makes it easier to bring housing to areas where it might be hard to convince a developer to make a big impact?
Yeah, well, one of the challenges is labor, right? We have a trades population that is aging, and we haven't been replacing our trades people as quickly as we'd like to. So finding all of the people you need in construction and electrical and others can be challenging. And thankfully, the modular build work means that you can do some of that where you have the professionals, and then you just come and assemble on site. So it takes some of the pressure off of the hunt for available trades folks. And that means you can prepare it somewhere and set it up somewhere else. And actually, you should go and check out the Build by Supreme in St. Stephen, because it's really beautiful. They have an accessible single floor family unit on one end, and then 4 others that are 2-story. It's really, really beautifully crafted, but it also lets us build 12 months of the year. Obviously, we can't be laying down on a job site on January 1st, but you can do all of that in a warehouse so that it's ready to go and helps us move more quickly, because we have to move faster. We have to move faster in addressing the housing crisis. Too many people are having a hard time paying rent.
That was Premier Susan Holt sitting down with CHCO on her tour of Southwest New Brunswick. We are going to take a quick break, but when we get back, we will be discussing the future of an over 50-year tradition in St. Stephen during International Homecoming Festival.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth. Interesting news over in St. Stephen. I know you've been following the International Homecoming Festival, and what we originally thought would be the first year in a very long time that the St. Stephen side of the parade wasn't going to be participating, and yet things have reversed.
Yes. So we first learned actually during that council meeting that you attended on July 30th that they were going to cancel the St. Stephen side of the parade, which was a very sad conversation for them to be having. This is a more than 50-year tradition where the two sides of the border come together and celebrate our uniqueness and our likenesses. And so it was a sad conversation. The conversation also got to a point where it was like, if we stop doing this, it won't ever happen again, because U.S. Customs does not want that parade to move forward, according to the people that I've spoken with.
Yeah, that was the feeling, that if this year was the year that they decided to take a break, this could affect the future of the parade forever, in terms of especially the U.S. side Border Patrol, as you mentioned, maybe thinking, okay, if you're not doing it this year, let's just cancel it for all years to come. It is definitely very unique, as you say, but a challenge for that day to have a parade that crosses an international border and runs smoothly. It's always been a fun parade to watch. I love watching, usually on the Calais side too, because it is cool to see this parade come over a border with the mayors from both towns, and it is quite special. So I understand the sentiment in St. Stephen of not wanting to see it go, and sometimes it does take those moments of saying to the whole community, hey, we're about to lose this. And I think that's what you saw, as people reach out and say, wait a second, I thought there were more people involved. I'm willing to put in a float and be a part of this to keep it alive.
Right. The impetus was that, there wasn't enough floats on the St. Stephen side. Calais had kind of met their end of the bargain, so to speak, and they sort of felt like they didn't have enough floats, although several organizations said that they signed up to participate. I also want to say, in the defense of businesses and things like that, summertime is hard. You're on vacation, you're at your cottage, you're maybe, busy with your business, so it is a difficult time to plan these things. But I also, had a conversation with folks in St. Stephen who worked very hard to put this together, who are part of the International Homecoming, the Homecoming Festival Committee, who work very tirelessly and who make calls and send emails for months trying to get people involved in this process. So you can imagine that it's frustrating from their side as well. I did talk to the Calais co-chair, the U.S. co-chair of the committee, who also said they weren't aware of the vote by council. They always intended to come across the border. That's always been part of the plan. And so they felt like it was a bit misleading to suggest that they didn't want to cross the border. They do, and they intended on doing that, and they still intend on doing that. But the parade will move forward.
Well, I think, one thing to keep in mind as well is that it's been a challenging year when we're talking about an international border. In a very close-knit border town, we are nevertheless still watching international news. And while Maine and New Brunswick might have a friendly relationship, we know that Ottawa and Washington are often at odds right now. So I think that can factor into it too. When you're deciding to put a float in, you also read the news every day and think, is this even going to be a reality this year? Why would I even bother? So I can also understand that mindset too. We also have a lot of people in our community who don't want to cross the border at all, and that can factor into someone's decision as well. So I think we have to keep in mind that this year especially, it's very nuanced. It can be that you're busy. It could be that at this point in time, and we know a lot of people have made a decision to not cross the border right now. And that's why the theme this year for a lot of the International Homecoming Festival is let's hug it out, for that very reason. There has been tension, and while we don't want to bring that into our close-knit, that community that happens to also be international, it nevertheless is a factor.
Yeah, Americans are our friends and neighbors, and this is a moment to remember that, while keeping in mind that the government that it voted for, or part of the country voted for, has threatened our sovereignty, but also our economic stability. So it's a challenging time, and there are a lot of tensions.
But we will be hugging it out, an international festival. I do look forward to going. I do love being part of a border community, even in these moments, because I think it also brings out the best in people. We see that happen in Pride events. So definitely it will be one of the most unique international festivals to cover, but I can definitely understand the different reasons behind people maybe not at first being on board with being a part of the parade.
We have some things on the agenda, and I probably won't get to them all, but we are working on the September edition of the print edition of the Courier.
Oh my goodness, yes. You can tell it's the end of August though, because everyone has been very busy with events. Summer's wonderful, but it is extremely busy. And normally we say we have a busy week ahead, but I think finally we hit a moment of, oh my gosh.
We should find wood somewhere and knock on it, because when I think things are going to be a little bit slower, they are not slow.
What do you have on the go next week?
So we're working towards a few stories. I've got a story coming about the St. Stephen homeless community and the efforts that are being undertaken there. I'm also working on a few things about the St. Andrew's Wharf, which is a topic that is at the top of mind for many people in St. Andrews. And we're also hoping to catch up with Eastern Charlotte, which has kind of fallen a bit to the wayside. So.
Yeah, well, a lot on the go. I know that Lucas Kohler has been paying a visit to the Charlotte County SPCA and the wonderful heroes behind Karma that help control the pet population in Charlotte County. So look for that story out next week. I will also be sitting down with Brent Butt of Corner Gas on Zoom. But here's some exciting news. He's coming to St. Andrews for Comedy Fest in September at Kira Amphitheater. So we're going to do a little preview of what you can expect. He wrote a show about life in small town Saskatchewan that is his reality. So I have a feeling for that Comedy Fest to have a small town Canadian come out and do jokes about small town life. I mean, he's made a career out of it already, so it should be really good. I'm looking forward to Jonathan Britton and I will be doing that interview together, my co-host of Good Day from the Bay. So we're very excited about that.
Do you think he would take my jokes about living in a small town? Because I have a few.
I think that, yeah, you can start, you definitely have a roster of jokes already from your year in Charlotte County. You made it, you're a true local now.
1 whole year, yeah, Today marks the 1 year anniversary of leaving Global News and coming to CHCO-TV. So,
wow, no turning back now.
For sure, but we've got lots on the agenda, and I know that there's more events coming up in the coming weeks.
This is something I'm excited about. We are profiling the athletes from Charlotte County who are going to the Canada Games, which kick off this weekend. So I think it's at least 5. I don't want to name them all right now because I will miss one and I'll feel really guilty, but look for those online on the Courier. CHCO.TV is our website for both CHCO and the Courier, so that we'll have profiles on all these young athletes doing incredible things. And as well, Lucas wanted me to make sure to point out that the Great Fundy Cultural Cleanup is happening at nature preserves all across the region next week. He's going to be going to the Navy Island one to do the cleanup there. So that's exciting. We also have our sports guys, Mick and T. Joe Tukoski will be in St. Andrews next week with Brandon. I'm going to get his last name wrong. It's Brandon Sherrod, that's it, who is this incredible coach of Yale basketball team. He's played professional basketball. We'll be sitting down with them. I think it'll be with Good Day from the Bay. I might learn some tricks from them with Jonathan. I was MVP of my high school basketball team.
I think you could.
Don't tell Jonathan that. I'm going to surprise him on the court.
Well.
Provided I still have my moves. I'm also going to go to Halifax to see John Mulaney at the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival. So that's just for fun.
You're going to
throw that in there.
You are going to have a fun, sporty week.
It's going to be sporty week.
Yeah,
it's a little comedy. It's a little comedy.
Yeah, we're excited for that.
And we're always excited when you join us for This Week Uncut. We'll see you next time. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.